You know, research is critical for change because what policymakers need is evidence. They need evidence that shows, one, that it can happen. So we need research that shows that it can happen, but we also need to show where there are gaps. But remember that research has to be accompanied by key policy messages. We do the research, we show the evidence, we show the data, but we must also be able to say, this is how you can use the results of our research. Otherwise, we leave them with information and data that is not useful. I want to share with you an experience that we had about a month ago. We had a retreat with the African ambassadors in Addis Ababa. And remember, the ambassadors, as well as the technical staff at the embassies, at one point worked in government. So they know what they are talking about. And one of their comments to us was, you do so much research. You share with us these glossy reports, but at the end of the day, what are you saying to us? We can look at your pages and pages of research, but we need you to critically point out what it is that you want us to do. So it's important that if research is to provide evidence, it must articulately clear the messages that we are sending to policymakers. It's our partners, I must say, from the beginning, it's mostly member states. It's also the African Union Commission, it's the regional economic communities. The biggest challenge I think that we face is for them to feel that they are just being researched. So at the end of the day, one of especially in the division that I had, the Social Development Policy Division, one of the methods that we've come up with is at the beginning of the research, we have a methodological workshop. And at that workshop, we invite member states, representatives from the different ministries where we would want to see the evidence reaching out to. We invite from the regional economic communities, we invite members from the African Union Commission, and engage them in the methodological workshop so that they can look at the method that we are going to use, what are the results that we anticipate out of it, and they can also participate already in the thinking and the conceptualization of the research. So the challenge is for them not to feel as if they are just being researched and they have no role in the research and the results might not have an impact. Let me start with a positive feedback of what I observed. In the research that we've been doing in Africa, you've been partnering researchers from the UK, researchers from India, from different countries with researchers in Africa. The only point that I'm missing in this is you could have brought in some representatives from government. So they are also part of this discussion and discourse, and we could have heard their voice to the research that is being undertaken. I think that would be very critical going forward. Try and engage them, not just government department, but even institutions like the regional economic communities. Because remember, if you look at SADC, if you look at ECOWAS, if you look at IGAD, they also want to engage with member states, and the research that you are undertaking could also help them as they reach out to member states. So it's looking across all those different institutions and communities. I think that's the bit that I missed in the conference. And also there was, though I need to say this, there was a research that actually indicated that they had engaged government. And this was a research on migration in Ghana. I was very impressed that they had engaged government, but a lot of them seem to be doing work with civil society, with the academia, and not necessarily engaging government. They need to feel that they are part of the research, not that they will just get the results. There are opportunities in that. Look at what are the emerging issues on the continent. Where is the continent concerned about? Let me look at an area that I think is so critical: employment. The youth bulge on the continent. Our research needs to be in the areas that Africa sees its biggest challenges, and the youth bulge is of such concern and is linked up to employment opportunities. Why don't we look at those areas and not just areas that, as social scientists and researchers we are comfortable with, but because we want to influence policy. So let's look at areas where governments are really looking for alternatives, where they want to learn from the other continents, because you cover all the different continents, Latin America, Asia, Africa, the developed world, Europe. It could be useful if we also looked at where are the emerging issues and where are the critical areas that our member states need help. I was fascinated by the parallel session this afternoon and the discussion where we're looking at the SDGs and how countries, where are the investments and where is the impact. I think that's a critical areas. We know the member states are also participating in the VNRs, the peer reviews in terms of their performance in SDGs. This is an opportunity. Can you imagine if we'd engage them in that discussion where the presentation was actually looking at where do we invest to be able to get an impact on the SDGs, and the member states, as they are reviewing themselves to present to the high-level forum in New York, have this methodology being presented and how they can use it. So I see those opportunities if we look at where we can be relevant, where the continent itself needs help, rather than research for the sake of research.